Guys, good morning. It is John C Morley here, serial entrepreneur. It's great to be with you. It's Saturday morning, April 13th, but this is the Friday show. Welcome. Whether you're here at 12:13 a.m. or 12:13 just after lunch, or perhaps 6 a.m. or 6 p.m., or maybe even another time, like maybe it's a 6 a.m. or 6 p.m., whatever time it is. Thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate that. Our master topic comes to a close today for the week, and the master topic is Life is Like Film. We're on Series 3, Show 15. Oh, did I forget to put my hat on there? I sometimes forget to put my hat on. So let's see if I got my hat. Yeah, it should. There we go. And I'll give you the granular topic for tonight in just a second, and that is success in focus. Developing Your Life's Masterpiece, Series 3, Show 15, Episode number 7. Can you believe, ladies and gentlemen, we are in our third year? That's a pretty remarkable thing, if I do say so myself. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. I really do appreciate it, and I love imparting all this amazing wisdom to you guys. When I do this, which I've been doing this for a long time, quite a few years, as um, you know, I know the technology and I know the stuff I'm teaching, but it's like you learn it more when you're preparing and then you're teaching it again. So it's great, really, really great. So let's get into what I want to say tonight. And that is the fact that our first point, okay? Our first point for this is there's similarities between meticulous processing of developing, which we've talked about before, right? And the journey of success in our lives. So developing film, there's so many things you have to take into account. You have to have the right order. You have to, first of all, you have to make sure there's no light when you're doing this. You have to make sure that you follow the time correctly. All right, that you put the film in correctly, you load it correctly. You agitate it properly, right? So that's really cool. So definitely check out my hat, guys. BelieveMeAchieve.com for more of my amazing, inspiring creations. Definitely check that out. You can check out TikTok. You can check out all my great stuff, all from my tree there, which you guys can find very, very easily by just going to BelieveMeAchieve.com. Really do appreciate you guys liking all this amazing content. All right, so when we think about the meticulous journey of life, we have to realize that success starts with us, not others. Success starts inside us. And then success can, let's say, bristle like enthusiasm to the outside. It has to start inside us, and then it can be part of the outside world. So there are a lot of factors, ladies and gentlemen, to becoming successful, right? There's a lot of, let's say, nuances, right? And that's a very, very important thing, right? And I know that what you want might seem unreachable. And it's not because it is unreachable, it's because of a perception that you put out there. But our perceptions, ladies and gentlemen, they become reality. What we focus on, ladies and gentlemen, is what becomes reality. All right? What we focus on is what becomes reality. So if we focus on something that's not what we want, well, that's what's going to manifest in our life. That's what's going to manifest in our life. So really cool how this all works, right? Our life has so many different nuances. And these nuances are pretty amazing, okay? If we're not careful, we'll miss something. And the one thing we miss could be the deciding factor to whether we are successful or to whether we are not successful. So I think that's a pretty cool thing, ladies and gentlemen. And so when people say to me, hey, John, there's so many things I can't master them all. Well, start worrying about one thing and perfecting that thing, right? So we know that when we develop film, we have to know what we're doing, right? I've said in the post before, it'll take you about 10 to 20 rolls of film before you get the exposure right. So just plan on that when you start, and you won't be disappointed. If it's less, great. But 10 to 20 rolls is usually where an amateur starts out. If they've been a newbie and they never did film developing, I remember the first time I did black and white film developing. It was an interesting process, very interesting process. And so, knowing that a time difference or a milliliter or two less or more could affect the color of the photo, it could affect the negative. So when we basically take that and we make that into the positive, we get our image. Now, I know what you're saying to me, John. These little things can't make a big difference. Well, I'm here to tell you that they can. So I want to give you a perfect example. Many of you know, you guys know about what we call the food safety danger zone. And I'm actually going to get just my bottle of water here because it's getting a little parched here for a second. All right, that's better. I usually have my water, but need to get my water there. So there is what we call the danger zone with food, okay? And the danger zone of food is pretty easy to understand. It's 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the danger zone. So you never leave food out of the refrigerator over 2 hours. If the temperature is above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, food should not be left out for more than 1 hour. Okay, that's the standard if it's above 90. Keep food hot at or above 140. So at or above 140. Do not drop below 140. Place the cooked food in chafing dishes, preheated steam tables, warming trays, and or slow cookers. Keep cold food cold. So let me say this again. Hot food needs to stay at 140, and it needs to be at that temperature and not lower. Now, there's some foods when you have the internal cooking temperature, they're going to be higher, right? But we're talking about keeping the food hot. I'm not talking about originally cooking it. I'm just keeping it warm because there are different internal cooking temperatures for meat, chicken, etc., right? So keeping cold food cold means that we need to keep it below 40 degrees. Below 40 degrees. All right. And so, for example, raw meat and poultry should always be cooked to a safe minimum internal temperature. And for example, if we're cooking poultry or stuffing or casseroles, it's 165 degrees Fahrenheit. If we're cooking egg dishes or ground meat, it's 160. If we're cooking beef, pork, lamb, veal, roast, steaks, or chops, it's 145. If we're reheating, like or we're doing ham or something's fully cooked and we're just reheating it and we want to hold the temperature for cooked foods, that's 140. So we never want to go below 140. But remember that we have to have the food reach its appropriate cooking temperature, or we're going to have people getting sick. Cold side, everything cannot get basically over the 40 degree mark is basically above the 40 degree. So we're getting our danger zone. So we're saying 140 to be safe. So, basically you need to make sure that your food, when you're dealing with food, okay, 140 or above. So 139 is really the danger zone. And so with freezing, you need to make sure that if it's freezing, that you keep food at or below 40 degrees. Okay? At or below 40 degrees. So that means 41 degrees would technically be the danger zone. So we're saying that the danger zone, in case you guys don't understand it, it's 41 degrees Fahrenheit, okay, all the way up to 140. So if you want to think of it something different, you could say, 141 to basically 40 is our danger zone, or we can just say that it's basically 40 to 140. And so we're saying that everything outside of that is danger. So we're really saying 39 to 139, but we're saying 40 to 140 is the range. You want to keep your foods in those ranges, right? If you get into above 41, well, you're going to have issues with your frozen food because things are going to start to get bacteria. 139, you're going to start to have issues because the hot food's going to start because it's not at the right temperature. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up to you because when we think about film, when we think about just something as simple as cooking or reheating, now there are lots of things in life that have specific requirements. Like our body temperature has a temperature, right? 98.6. So what are the common, let's say, temperatures of our body from being well to sick, right? So 98.6 is normal, right? And so that's very important that a body is at 98.6 degrees. If your temperature is between 100 and 102, drink plenty of fluids and rest. And take something to reduce your fever. Okay, that's pretty important. If your temperature is over 102 Fahrenheit and doesn't go down within an hour after you take a fever-reducing medication, then call your doctor. And remember, if you have a fever with a cough or shortness of breath, and think you might have contacted someone that is transferred COVID-19, call your doctor to talk about the next steps. So I brought these two very unrelated things, but they're important to understand that our life has very specific requirements. Electricity, okay, for example, I'll just give you another example. So AC electricity, okay, goes from basically it's really around 115 to 120 AC. Now I'm not going to give you a whole engineering or electric lesson here, but 115 to 120 is AC power. Okay, so alternating current. So that means it fluctuates between the 115 and the 120. So how about 208, 220 AC power? How does that fluctuate? So that's it. It's 208, 220, right? So the difference, so you have a 208, which is 208 volts, and you have a 220 volt. So 208 volts basically is one type of the 220, and 208 volts is associated with what we call a three-phase power supply. But it's still possible to connect a 208 single phase to a device from a three-phase supply. So on 220 volts, each hotline carries a 120 volt leg, but the application requires 3 hotlines plus a neutral. Okay. When we think about the 208 requirement for people to make, it takes advantage of the phase difference between the lines and combines any 2 live wires. So for a single phase, one of the line peaks is at 120. The other produces 88 volts, thus producing a combined voltage of 208 for a 3-phase supply combination of any 2 120 lines. So basically, we have 2 types of 220. We have the 208, and then we have the 220. The plugs are different on a 208 versus a 220 as well. But what I'm saying to you is that everything in life has a parameter, right? When you boil water, let's think about this for a moment. So what temperature does water boil at, right? Water boils at what temperature? Water's boiling point is 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. Okay? So the question people ask me is boiling point of water. Does the boiling point of water change? So this is a very good question. Does the boiling point change? So the reason a boiling point changes can be with elevation because atmospheric pressures change, and the effect happens when you compare boiling water in a valley compared to a mountaintop. For every roughly 150 meters or 500 feet, you increase in elevation, water's boiling point decreases about a half a degree. So let me say that again. For every 150 meters or 550 feet that you go up in elevation, water's boiling point decreases by a half a degree. Thus, if we were to decrease the elevation, then it would basically go up by half a degree. Pretty cool, right? So our daily barometric pressure changes affect boiling point, and the temperature difference is really small to notice. That's why it's not a big deal. But this is why when you bake, you have different things you have to do when you bake at higher altitudes, right? You have to set your oven differently. You have to use different ingredients, right? Because you can't use less of something or more of something depending on what it is. So the boiling point in Denver, water boils at a lower temperature in cities like Denver and La Paz, but a higher temperature in places like Death Valley and Dead Sea. If you live in a high altitude location, food cooks at a lower temperature, so it often takes longer to cook. Okay, you can't make water hotter by boiling it longer or applying more heat. This is why many recipes include a high altitude cooking instructions or recommended using a pressure cooker. So again, high altitude. If you live in a high altitude location, food cooks lower temperature. If you're at a lower altitude, it actually cooks faster. So higher is just the reverse, it'd be lower. I want to compare this to another thing we learned. And that was f-stops. Remember we talked about f-stops? So f-stops on a camera. Does everybody remember f-stops from the other day? Hopefully you guys remember f-stops. Yes, f-stops on a camera. So f-stops on a camera control the aperture, right? And that aperture controls basically whether it's wide open or whether it's really a small hole. So let's take a look at a number, for example. If we have an F8, which is basically a number, right? The lower number, F8, the aperture is going to be at the lowest point, right? When we go to a 2.8, right? So basically, the way it works is the lower the number, okay, the higher the aperture. All right. And the higher the number, okay, so the lower the number, okay, the higher the aperture. The higher the number, the smaller the aperture. Let me say that again. So the lower the number, okay, the wider the aperture of the lens. The lower the number. The higher the number, the smaller the aperture of the lens. So higher the number, okay, has a smaller aperture. When we deal with a lower number, it has a bigger aperture. So lower number, bigger aperture, higher f-stop number, smaller aperture. Just remember it's reversed. So our world has a lot of parameters. That's the thing that I want to share with you guys. So when we think to this week about film, and there's very specific processes to yield the desired results. And we've talked about that. I'm not going to go through that again. But the whole reason for choosing film is that it is a process that we rely on to develop our pictures. Now, when we use something like an iPhone or a camera, we don't need to deal with developing film unless we're doing a large and stuff like that. But we can still use digital software. But understanding f-stops on a camera or even on your iPhone, right? So the lower the number of the f-stop, the wider the aperture. The lens is open bigger, okay? The lower the number, the wider. Lower the number, the wider. The higher the number, the smaller the aperture is. So now knowing that piece of information, you can easily understand how to let in less light, how to let in more light, okay, by understanding that given principle. So the next thing I want to talk about, which is pretty interesting, is the importance of creating our formula. So whether we're talking about a recipe like the high altitude, right, or the low altitude, right, we understand the formula and then we're able to make deductions. So what did we say? So higher altitude does what? It boils at a so boiling water at a higher altitude, right? And what did we say? So if you're on a higher altitude, right, cooking times are going to be longer. Okay? Longer. If you're at a lower altitude, they're going to be faster. So remember, it's just the reverse. Okay? So higher altitude, slower cooking times. Lower altitude, faster cooking times. So now that we know that formula, we can adapt recipes and like that. But what about in our own life? Well, when we try to work on challenges, we don't want to worry about the whole thing. We want to just start with one little piece and get that perfected. And then we can create a formula on that so we can keep reproducing that over and over again. So understanding the wisdom is really important. And if we repeat the same thing over and over again, right, expecting results, it leads to stagnation. But also what it does is, according to Albert Einstein, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, that's insanity. So when you have a recipe and you keep doing it, you're going to get the same results every time. All right. Perfecting each step of the process before going to the next phase is so very vital. Maybe you're building, I don't know, you're building let's say you're building a birdhouse. Well, the first thing you need to do is get the first step right, which is get all the right material. Make sure you have the boards all cut into what you need. So you've kind of sketched it out. Now you know the boards that you need. When we start to realize that we can chunk things and that we can learn from a formula, this is when the magic happens. We harness the power within ourselves by believing, and our capabilities are embraced, and our potential for greatness just grows. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm John C Morley, serial entrepreneur. It's been an amazing privilege, pleasure, and honor to be with you this fantastic evening. I hope that you will like, love, and support the channel. Definitely like and love my TikTok so we can stream on there eventually. So grateful to have you guys. I'll be on later tomorrow night with another brand new master topic. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this analogy to film. And even though you might not be part of that film process, I think you can at least appreciate the fact that when you want to do something, whether it's mixing a color, whether it's following a certain set of steps so you get this desk built right, if you follow those steps every time, you're going to get the result you want because it's worked for other people. But it's when we do the same steps and we say, well, gee, I'm doing it again, I'm getting the same. No, you have to change something. People ask this all the time, marketing, advertising. I do the same thing over and over again, but why am I getting the same? Why am I not getting different results? Because you're doing the same thing. You're not changing. Change is not easy. Change is not comfortable. So we have to practice getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm John C Morley, serial entrepreneur. Be sure to check out BelieveMeAchieve.com for all my great creations, and I'll catch you guys real soon. Have a wonderful rest of your morning, everyone.